Hello guys, and welcome to your ultimate guide for applying to internships specifically for finance and actuarial studies students. And by the time I graduate next year, I will have had 5 internships. Now this is the cold email that I was using. Your cold email will not get you anywhere if you have a bad resume. The biggest downfall here is your I'm sure a lot of the tips and advice I'd say would apply for all industries/degrees, but because I study actuarial studies and finance, it's just going to be a little bit more tailored towards that because that's just what I know the best. At university, I'm actually one of the careers directors for ASOC, which stands for the Actuarial Society. So I would say that I'm very familiar with common questions that students have specifically regarding internships, how to get them, what to include in your resume, all of those things. So today, hopefully I'll be covering all of that. I'm currently in my 3rd year of university at UNSW, and by the time I graduate next year, I will have had 5 internships. Now, I'm saying that not to brag or anything, of course. I'm just trying to tell you that I've had this experience and I've been there, done that. I've made all the mistakes. So I feel like I've got a lot of knowledge and wisdom which I can share with you guys so that hopefully you guys don't make the same mistakes I do. And I just want to give you guys the best chance possible at getting an internship. In terms of what I'm going to cover, I'm going to talk about my experiences, and then I'll talk about where you can find internships, and then I want to go into cold emailing, and lastly I'll talk about your resume and CV. Since this video is just about applying for internships, this won't really cover anything like interviews or things like that. Okay, so starting with my background, I'm going to try to keep this as short and concise as possible because I know you guys aren't here to learn about me, but you're here for the tips. I have my LinkedIn on my laptop up right now, so that's what I'm looking at just to make sure I don't forget anything. Basically, I'm in my 3rd year of my 4-year degree studying a Bachelor of Actuarial Studies and Commerce, majoring in Finance at UNSW. Okay, so starting off, I wouldn't consider this an internship, but rather just work experience. So I was an accountant at a very small boutique accounting firm, and I actually got that from cold calling, not even cold emailing, but cold calling. Okay, so this is where my internship experience starts. In my 1st year of university, I got a role as an actuarial assistant at this, again, very small boutique actuarial firm, and I got that from cold emailing. Then in my 2nd year of university, I was an audit and assurance vacationer at KPMG Australia, and I got that by just applying through their standard process on their website. Then also in my 2nd year of university, I got an internship as an analytics consulting intern at Ember Advisors. And the way I got that is actually through my university society, ASOC, or the Actuarial Society. So basically they were doing a mock interview workshop event, and I was actually partnered with Ember Advisors, and I sort of did this mock interview workshop session with them, and I was really interested in the work they did. So ultimately I did end up cold emailing them as well. And now currently I'm an actuarial intern for the NDIA, which is the National Disability Insurance Agency in Australia. And for this internship, I actually got scouted by a recruiter, believe it or not, so I didn't actually apply through them. And then lastly, over the summer, I'll be an actuarial vacationer at EY, and that one I also just applied through their website. Now, the reason I wanted to tell you guys all that internship experience isn't just to list it out for you guys, but I really wanted to highlight and show to you guys the very wide range of ways you can find an internship. And this kind of leads me into my first topic I want to talk about, which is where you can find your internships. So I think the main way people look and find internships is by looking on Seek, Grad Connect, Prosper, Indeed, LinkedIn, things like that. Those very, I would say, oversaturated websites because, everyone can see them, everyone has access to them. So say a company puts a job application up, I think there's hundreds and hundreds of applications. So obviously it's a lot harder to get an internship like that. And while I'm sure using those websites definitely does work, I mean, out of all my internship experiences, none have been through websites like that. And so, I think people really underestimate all the various ways you can go about trying to look for an internship. So I thought I'd list out some of those ways here. So just to get it out of the way, I think the best non-traditional way to get an internship is by cold emailing. Now my next topic is all about that, so I won't touch on that just yet because I'll go a lot more in depth. Other than that though, another way I know which is pretty successful is if your friend is working at a company and then say the company says they're hiring and looking to hire more people, you can get that friend to refer you. So for example, that's what I did at one of my internships. I actually referred a lot of my friends, and I think 4 or 5 of them are now interning there. Another scenario would be if your friend is planning to leave a place and then they can refer you to kind of replace them, I guess. And I've known cases where that has worked as well. Just note that this tip probably works the best for smaller places, so not really big places which already have very standardized hiring programs in place, places like the Big Four. Another thing would be to look into your university courses. So I know specifically UNSW has this course called Com 2222, where basically companies and the university kind of work together to have internship programs, and then you can apply to those internships through the university basically, and I think you still have to hand in like your resume and do an interview and everything like that, but I guess it does narrow down the batch of people which apply. Something to note about that though is a lot of them are unpaid, but I think especially at the start when you're just really looking for experience to get you started, I think it's completely fine to take an unpaid role, especially if it's just for like 10 weeks. Also, my university has this thing called the COLT program where sometimes they'll advertise one-off paid internships as well, so you can always keep an eye out for that, especially if your university has something similar. Other than that, you can also look at job listings, but specifically from recruiters and not the actual company. So for example, I know SKL Actuarial does a lot of actuarial recruitment, and often they'll post like actuarial internship roles. I feel like those always get less applications than listings made by the actual company itself, maybe because like the recruiting firm name looks a bit dodgier, or maybe I don't really know why, but you look into the firm and they're trustworthy, you can definitely apply through that. Like for example, the NDIA for me, as I mentioned earlier, I actually got through like a recruiting company. Although it wasn't me applying specifically through their listing, it was still through like a recruiter, and I'm pretty sure because it was through a recruiter, there was just like less applicants in general. Okay, now that I've told you all of those other niche ways you can find internships, let's talk about cold emailing specifically because there is a lot to unpack. Something I hear a lot of students talk about is that it's really hard to get internships because they have no previous experience. And when they say that, I tell them always to just try cold emailing. Now, cold emailing is so perfect, especially when you have very limited experience, because most of the time cold emailing isn't you applying to these really huge, big firms. Cold emailing mostly works for smaller boutique firms. Let me say that again. Cold emailing is more for smaller/boutique firms. Don't expect to get like an internship at like JP Morgan or something like that because you cold emailed. No. Also, this is the method you want to be using when you're pre-penultimate and trying to look for an internship, because a lot of the time the actual internship applications through like the company websites and things like that will have a prerequisite that you have to be pre-penultimate, which basically means that you have to be in your second last year. So if you're really proactive and you're trying to look for an internship early on, cold emailing is also what I would do because there's really no restrictions. So cold emailing, I would say, is more to get your foot in the door if you don't have much work experience to start with. Okay, so starting off, how can you find companies to email? So when I was doing this myself, I would look on LinkedIn and try to find mutuals which were studying the same thing as me. And then I would look at their work experience and see if they have some internship experience at a niche or more boutique firm. If they do, then there's a very, very high likelihood that they got that through cold emailing. So I would list that company down and eventually I just make a huge list of things. Another thing I noted was I would look at their like date of graduation essentially and check if they were pre-penultimate or penultimate when they had that internship, because I think a lot of companies nowadays only hire for penultimate. Now that didn't really stop me from emailing them. It was more just like a note in my mind for like how likely/successful it would be that my application would kind of go through. Another thing you can do if you don't have people specifically to look through is you can just look up the company on LinkedIn, and then it'll tell you the people you're associated with/following who have worked there before. And then lastly, another way you can do this is once you find a company that you're interested in applying for, you go on their page, and then there's a section on the side that says pages people also viewed, and often those will be like companies related to the company you're currently looking at. So I would also go through that and just do the same process. And then at the end of this process, I would just have a whole list of companies which I'm interested in applying for, as well as if they accepted pre-penultimate students. Okay, where you can find cold email contacts. Okay, so I'm going to do an example here and I'll show it on screen. Start by going to the company website. If you go there, you can scroll down to the bottom, and if you go to, where is it, contact us. Once you get there, you'll scroll down. There is this like form thing you can fill out. So with this form, you can just fill it out, but don't fill out the whole cold email here. Just say, hi, I'm interested in cold emailing for a potential internship opportunity. What's the best email I can contact? And then if they get back to you, you can cold email that email. I know this example that I showed you had like an actual form for you to fill out, but sometimes a lot of the websites will also just list like a contact reception email, and it might be like hello at like companyname.com.au or something like that. Sometimes the companies will also have an email listed for specifically recruitment or like career related emails. So if they have that listed, definitely use that one. Another thing you can also do though is go on LinkedIn and look up the company and search for their hiring manager or like someone in HR, and then you can send them a cold LinkedIn DM, I guess. Make sure it's very formal and just say like, hi, I'm looking to potentially cold email this company. What would be the best contact email? Okay, so now that you've found the companies you're interested in applying for as well as their email addresses, here's how you can actually compose the email. Now, this is the cold email that I was using in my second year of university. You can definitely use it as a cold email template. Just breaking down this email a little bit as well as how I structured it, you should basically think of the body of your email as a mini cover letter which you're sending the company. Okay, so firstly, of course, just say hello and make sure to follow that up with a really nice and friendly greeting like, I hope you had a wonderful weekend, or I hope you've been well. And then in the next paragraph, this is where I'd introduce myself. So you would say your name, what you're studying, and why you're emailing. And then in your next paragraph, which I would argue is probably the most important paragraph in your cold email, is you want to say why you're interested in the company. Now, the biggest downfall here is you're way too generic. And you say something like, oh, I would love to apply what I've learned in university in real life. Because if you think about it, that can apply for any company that you're cold emailing, not just the specific company which you're currently emailing. And I know this takes a lot of time, but you should do your own individual research into each and every company and pick something that interests you about that company. Now, the more personal you can make it, the better that is. So in the cold email template I just showed you, I attended an event by the Actuarial Society, the mock interview workshop I was talking about earlier, and then I was assigned with their company, and then I basically talked about how I got to talk to one of their workers and what they said really resonated with me, which is what motivated me to apply essentially. Just try and make it very personal, very company specific, and before you send the email, just think, would this paragraph make sense in any other context which isn't for this company? And if it won't make sense, that's when you know that you've been specific enough. And then lastly, just have a paragraph about what and why you can contribute to their company. So this is where you kind of want to talk yourself up a little bit. Say like, maybe you've got HD grades, or maybe you've had past internship experience which is relevant, or I don't know, maybe you're in a society with a leadership role or something like that. Just say stuff to make yourself look good, essentially. And then after that, you just wrap it off and sign off. Now for some other tips, make sure that you have your resume and academic transcript already attached onto the email, because you don't want them to email you and be like, oh, can you please send your resume and academic transcript? And then it's just more back and forth. Just make their life as easy as possible and just have it attached to the original email. Also, another thing you might not think about is make sure that the profile photo of your email is very appropriate. Like make sure it's not some like thing you set in primary school or anything like that. Personally, I just changed it to my LinkedIn photo, so it's just a professional photo of me. And along with that, make sure that your email handle is also appropriate. And if it's not, you might need to create a new email account. Next, make sure you have a very strong and clear email subject heading. Now you can go about this in many ways, whether you want to be a bit more creative about it or just put it very bluntly as it is, but whatever you do, make it very attention grabbing and also clear. And lastly, make sure the email isn't like paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs long. Like, remember, this isn't an actual cover letter, it's just the body of an email. And if like I open an email and there's just like 10 million paragraphs and like an essay, like I'm not really going to want to read it. I'm just going to be skimming it anyway. So just make it very concise and have your key points very, very clear. And with that, if you follow those tips, hopefully you'll be very successful with cold emailing, because this is what I did and that's how I got 2 of my internships, is just purely by cold emailing. And one thing about cold emailing is if a company doesn't reply to you, don't let that dishearten you. I'd say 95% of the time, the company will just ghost you and you won't get a reply. Sometimes you'll get a rejection reply, and sometimes in the very, very, very off chance, something will actually become of it. So yeah, just keep trying, don't let it dishearten you, and I'm sure eventually something will come of it. Just make sure not to give up. Okay, now moving on from cold emailing, I want to talk about your resume and cover letter, because your cold email will not get you anywhere if you have a bad resume. To make all of your lives easier, I'm going to drop the link to the resume template I use in the description box, so just click on that if you want that, and then you can just edit it straight from there. Since you're watching this video, I'm assuming you're in university, so this is what you can do to the resume template to make it more university suitable. So currently it has work experience as the first section, but since you are in uni, I'd recommend having education as the first section. The template also doesn't have a section for extracurricular activities, but if you're in university, I would say because your work experience isn't as built up, your extracurriculars are very, very important. And also nowadays, I think recruiters don't want to see just like, oh, you've got amazing grades, you've got good work experience. They also want to see that you have a personality outside of it. So whether that's you're in a society or like you've done work experience, things like that, all of that will really add a lot. The template also has the certifications and skills sections. Now, personally, I don't really have any certifications, so I just turned that into a skills and interest section. I think it's very important to have an interest section as well, because just going back off what I said, like, people want to see that you have an actual personality as well. And I found that sometimes in interviews, recruiters will have your resume printed and then they'll like to ask you about your interests. I think there's also a lot of talk these days about whether your resume should be strictly one page, and I've talked to a lot of recruiters about this, and I feel like the general consensus is if you need more page to show off all your work experience, then definitely use more than one page. If you can get it into one page though, that's also great. Just make sure if you are using like more than one page, that what you're saying is concise and it's not just 1.5 pages, because you have random dot points about this and there's just a lot of waffle. Only have it as more than one page if you genuinely cannot fit all your experience in one page. So personally, my resume is 1.5 pages, and I've definitely gotten internships since my resume has been 1.5 pages. So I don't think you're not going to get an internship just because your resume is more than one page, but just keep in mind to have it concise. I think now is also a good time to do a cheeky little plug about my Instagram and TikTok account, which I also run with my friend. So it's at CareerMate and there my friend and I just answer all things career/internship related, specifically for actuarial studies and commerce students. We also post about any internship and grad role openings. We have tips on resumes, cover letters, like a lot of these things I'm saying to you right now, it has already been covered on that page. But specifically why I wanted to bring this page up is because we currently have this series called like Reviewing Your Resumes, where basically a lot of students have sent us their resumes and we review it personally and give feedback. So I don't know, if that's something you're interested in, please look into it and you can send us a message on there and we'll eventually get to your resumes. But yeah, that's just if you want some more personal tailored resume advice. Now going into tips and mistakes that I see for your resume. Firstly, sometimes people will have a little profile section where they write a little bit about themselves, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But again, I would kind of treat that as a cover letter, and you want that little section to be very specific to the company that you're applying for and not just super generic. Secondly, I know a lot of people use ChatGPT days to help write their resumes. However, one thing is sometimes people forget to edit like the American English into British English, or they leave in like a very long em dash, which even if you didn't use ChatGPT, I feel like the super long em dash is kind of associated with ChatGPT these days. So do a very, very, very good proofread of your resume and make sure there's no ChatGPT stuff left in there. Another thing is not using enough numerical dot points. Now, say for example, you're a tutor and you say like, I help tutor students. Obviously that is way less effective than if you were to say, I help tutor students and I raise their grades by 45%. Or like, I help generate this much revenue. Or like, I served this many customers per shift. Like, really try add in numbers where you can. Another thing based on that is try tailor these dot points specifically for the skills which the companies are looking for. So for example, often in job listings, there'll be like a skills section and it might be like teamwork or something like that. So if there's teamwork there, try highlight teamwork in these dot points. I think another thing is just really be aware of the formatting of your resume. I feel like I've seen a lot of resumes where, for example, the title of this one section will be bolded, but the next section won't be. And I feel like once those formatting mistakes start adding up, it can actually start affecting your resume. But yeah, I would say those are some of the common mistakes that I see a lot. Now onto cover letters. I feel like I did already talk about how to write them and how to structure them when I was talking to you about how you should structure the body of your cold email, because like I said, that should just be a mini cover letter. So in your actual cover letter, feel free to go into more detail about things, especially because you're writing in an actual doc. Again, I don't know how much I can emphasize this, but just make sure it's very, 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 very specific and targeted to the company you're applying for. Everything I said for the body of the email essentially applies for this as well. I don't think there's too many ways you can go wrong with a cover letter unless you make it too general and not personal enough. So make it specific and make it personal and you'll be fine. I'm going to give you some more examples about how you can make the paragraph about why you're interested in applying for the company more specific and personable, other than the one I already mentioned. So for example, another one is I talked to a company at a careers fair I attended. Or another one is I got to work with this sponsor as part of ASOC. Or another one could be I've had a friend who'd interned there before and it really interests me. Or another one could be maybe you personally use their products. Like, I feel like there's just a million endless ways you can make it very personal. So definitely take your time to do that. And even if you think this might be a lot of effort to do, say you do get passed and you get an interview from that company, one question they're definitely going to ask you is why you're interested in their company anyways. So you can just think of it as doing a little bit of prep for your interview, and you can just answer in the interview what you say in your cover letter as well. You'll inevitably have to think about it anyway, so you should just think about it right at the start when you're writing your cover letter. Okay, I think that is all I have to say about applying for internships. The video took a lot longer to film than I thought. I feel like I was just yapping because I had so much to say. I feel like you can probably tell the lighting of the video changed from the start of the video to the end of the video. Like I said before, I just had so much to say. I actually yapped so much. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments and I'll definitely try and get back to you. And if these videos interest you, please follow Career Oz. My friend and I try post on there every single day, and we just give you career advice, opportunities, things like that. So you definitely don't want to miss it. I was originally going to talk about interview tips as well and how to do well in interviews, but seeing how long this video is, I'll probably try and make that another video if you guys are interested. If you are, please let me know. I do specifically have a tip about how you can answer every single question you get in an interview. So I don't know, that sounds like a pretty good tip to me. Again, if you have any other questions, please feel free to let me know, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you around soon. Bye!